Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the My Greek Island podcast with your hosts George Tsounyas
and Maria Petrakou. Now today we're talking about an island that brought me and George together, where our love affair began. And by love affair I don't mean literally, I mean a mutual passion for the Greek island travel, for adventure, endless discussions about inclusivity and social justice, and also the start of a robust friendship, right, George?
Indeed, and all things, you introduced me to all things the universe, because if you haven't gathered, Maria is extremely spiritual and likes to talk about the universe, and I still remember the 3 answers the universe has, but I'm not going to bore our listeners to that. But back to our topic. Today we are discussing the first island we accidentally visited together, or I went to visit Maria on her travels, and that island was the island of Kythera.
Kythera, yes, Kythera. And just to make it clear, we visited during the peak of the pandemic. So throughout the episode, you might see us explaining a few differences than that you'd probably notice than if you were to visit it now.
Absolutely. But before we dive into Kythera, if you're not following us on Instagram, and many of our listeners are because we're seeing our numbers go up, head over and hit that follow button on the Instagram handle at My Greek Island.
Yes. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Hello and welcome to another episode of the My Greek Island podcast, dedicated to take you, the wanderlust, on a journey through Greece.
There are 227 inhabited Greek islands. Which one will you visit next?
My Greek Island, with your hosts George and Maria.
The island of Kythera. First things first, this island is written in about 4-5 different ways. So we're going to be writing it in one way, but you might see it written in various different formats, but it's always pronounced Kythera. And I'm not going to go through the spelling of each one, but you'll be able to see if you do visit the island. I would say the island is rustic. My mum loves that word. Charming and cute. And interestingly, despite its geographical location, it's actually the south of the Peloponnese, Kythera is officially part of the Ionian island group. And correct me if I'm wrong, Maria, off the top of my head, I think there's 7 Ionian islands, and it's one of the 7?
Yes, it is. It's one of the 7 Ionian islands, so in the Ionian Sea, or Eptanissa, as the Greeks say, which stems from the word epta, which means 7, and nisya, which means island, so Eptanissa. But it's definitely much further away than the other 6. So the other ones that are more known are Lefkada, Corfu, Zante or Zakynthos, Kefalonia, Ithagi. Those are the ones on the other side. So it's geographically quite further away from them, but it does belong to those 7 islands.
Indeed. And another fun fact, believe it or not, it belongs to the municipality of Attica, which is Athens and the wider region, or the Athens region. And that is also the case for its small sibling island of Antikythera, which Maria and I have not visited, but we would love to visit one day. In terms of Kythera itself, it's a relatively secluded island in terms of you can have really secluded beaches, particularly when we went, but we also think some of the beaches that are harder to get to, they would be secluded most of the time, potentially. And it is famous for its beaches, nature. Also, what we found out, it's treks that they have, and it's definitely worth a visit. there are several villages with Venetian architecture, abandoned settlements, monuments. There is a waterfall that we will talk about shortly. So it's really great for people that like nature and history alike. Out of season, I think there's around, from what the locals that we spoke to said, there's around 3,000 people that live on the island permanently. And it was referred to in Homer's Iliad and is known in mythology as the birthplace of the goddess Aphrodite.
In addition to Cyprus? Interesting.
Yeah. So this was my first ever trip with the My Greek island, the Wanderlust, where we were in the middle of the pandemic and we were both in Greece at the same time. Our worlds collided and, well, our worlds came together actually, and I ended up jumping on a flight and going to meet Maria in Kythera, wondering if she was actually going to turn up and if she actually existed, although I did trust the friend who put us in touch together. But actually, this was initially your solo trip. So, Maria, will you care to tell our listeners why you chose the island and where you stayed and, how you got there? Because it's quite an interesting route that you took.
Yeah, so, I mean, as we said, we were literally in the peak of the pandemic. It wasn't really clear if summer was going to be cancelled that year because there were very strict restrictions. I think I booked a ticket. I was in Cyprus at the time. I booked a ticket to go to Athens in 3 days. Still wasn't sure if I was going to go. I decided the day before, right, I'm going to go. Booked a car with unknown return date. And I actually booked a one-way ticket from Cyprus to Athens. So I had no idea how long I was going to spend there. I had 2 weeks of work and I was just going to play it by ear. As soon as I got to Athens, I drove to the Peloponnese and visited a friend of mine who was in a village called Paliochori, which is close to an area called Leonidio, which is very famous for its production in eggplants. And it actually has an eggplant festival every year. So I stayed with her for 5 days and then I'm like, okay, should go somewhere next. By that time, we had not spoken and decided that you would be joining me. I'm like, where should I go? Where should I go? You know what? I'm going to go to Kythera. And that's when I think I spoke to you and told you, I'm going to Kythera. Do you want to join me? So I literally left my friend, drove to an area called Napoli, which is exactly opposite Kythera. I booked a boat ticket within an hour, had my coffee, got on a boat, drove on the boat, and then I got to Kythera, and a few days later you arrived. Now, where I decided to stay, when I got there, I had no idea where I was staying. I didn't have accommodation, and I didn't know if I was going to find accommodation. So I was very, very chilled about everything. I drove around. I don't know why I was drawn to go to Chora. I drove around Gapsali, which is the beachfront, literally below Chora. And I was like, do you know what? I want to stay in Chora. So I walked around Chora. Not many options for accommodation in Chora. And I walked into like the second hotel, I think, and they had a room. I had to bear in mind that you were going to stay as well. So we needed something that could potentially accommodate us both, but not, with separate sleeping arrangements. And I didn't have to look far. And I think after that, it was super easy. So, yeah. I
mean, pretty cool. I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether we would recommend rocking up to an island now in August, because it was the end of August and not having accommodation booked. I'm pretty sure Greece is quite popular, and if not, it should be on your list. But yeah, I don't think it'd be a risk to turn up end of August to try and get accommodation.
Yeah, I think so, especially August. I mean, if you're rocking up mid-September, then maybe, but August, no chance. And from what I heard, people that visited Kythera the year after and the year after that, they really struggled to find accommodation because the island was packed. So we were super lucky when we went. We were. I mean, I was booking the boat ticket an hour before I was getting on the boat, or the flight that I took from Cyprus. I think I was one of 3 passengers. So I think it was a very special case.
Yeah. What you didn't mention
However,
when
yeah.
we met was, did you go to the eggplant festival? Because I love aubergines. I call them aubergines.
It was cancelled because of the pandemic. So there was no festival because of the
my God,
pandemic.
I
but I did,
literally love aubergines. So
yeah.
I would be
But
down for going there.
I did get to eat a lot of aubergine. I mean, I got to have pizza with aubergine. They make spoon sweet with aubergine. Like they make it. I ate a lot of aubergine. There was just no festival due to the pandemic. So I need to go back and another time and would
Another thing
definitely
we
recommend
share
it.
in common, our love for aubergines.
Oh yes.
Anyway, so you stayed in Hora. Would you recommend staying in Hora? And other than that, you said you drove and you got the ferry over from Napoli. But are there alternative ways? I mean, I flew. You were going to mention that, but are there alternative ways to reach the island?
Yeah. So your first question, would I recommend Hora? 100% yes. I personally loved it because we would, remember we would park at night and we would just chill in Hora because it's super cute with the little streets. There's not much going on.
No.
Although I think I'm going to ask you that question, so I'll leave it for you to answer. But I personally enjoyed Hora. As I said before, though, accommodation in Hora is very limited, so I would definitely recommend booking in advance.
So get booking now if you're thinking of going in the summer, basically, is what she's saying.
We stayed at a place called Hora Views, which was run by this great lady called Mrs. Litsa. So huge hugs, Kyria Litsa. And it wasn't literally in the heart of Hora. So you would pass by the bars, etc., and then you would go under what would you call that? Like you
An
would go
arch?
under
It was like a little arch.
Yeah. There was an arch that you would go under, and then it was the accommodation. It was exactly opposite the police station. And that's the route that you would take to go up to the castle, which we're going to talk about further down. So I guess one thing I would caveat is that Hora would definitely be much busier than what we saw it, because when we went there was a restriction on music, and music was switching off at midnight, which I secretly loved because I got to
after
go
what
up
happened
earlier
last year.
Yeah. But I think that even with the loud music going on until a bit later and more people out and about, where we stayed was probably quite well located, so I don't think it would be impacted by the noise. You asked alternative ways to reach the island. Yes, so you can go from Napoli, which is 1.5 hours. The cost is about 12-13 euros per person, and I think it's approximately 45 euros to take the car with you. Alternatively, you can take a ferry from Athens, from Piraea, but I think it's about 7 hours, so to bear in mind. And then you can also take a boat from Crete, from Kissamos, which is about 5 hours. And additionally, you also have an airport with domestic flights, that's how you arrived with a flight from Athens. I think it connects to Athens and Thessaloniki. And given that I have a huge love for the shipping tycoon Aristotelis Onassis, worth mentioning that the airport of Kythera is actually named after his son, Alexandros Onassis.
Yeah. I flew into Kythera from Athens on what can only be described. It was my experience, so it could be different on those really, really small planes with a propeller. So if if you don't like flying, just be warned. It could be like other airlines have bigger planes, but my one that I went with there was a very small plane. And yeah, that's how I joined you, Maria. And what would be, it was to become first of many trips. And here we are talking about our trips on a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. But indeed, one of many trips, and looking forward to those to follow. But I'm going to ask you a question now. How many days would you recommend to our listeners, George? And why don't you give us a chat about the Hora life?
You could easily spend 7 days on the island, but I think as we talk through, you'll probably think even 10 would be good because you could combine it. I think 7 days would be around about enough time. especially given the amount of driving that you'll be doing. And you want to have some days where you want to relax and maybe not be driving to another beach, another location to see something, or looking at caves or things that we're going to talk about. I think 7 is a minimum. If you wanted to do just certain things, just have a flavor, you could do 5. But I think with the traveling to get there as well, unless you're flying in and flying out, I think you need to have a sufficient amount of time there. So around 7 days.
Although I don't think, did you find the driving, I didn't find the distances that big. I mean, you did need to drive, yes, but I didn't find the distances that big.
Yeah, I think maybe for me it was more that some of the roads were quite narrow.
Correct, they were narrow.
People become accustomed to on the Greek islands, but I think that whole like narrow roads and some of the beaches are a bit more secluded that you can get. I mean, I wasn't driving, so I can't complain, but I can imagine if I was the driver, I'd be getting tired. But yes, it's not like the bigger islands that people can visit.
Yeah.
So, in terms of the Hora life, so there's in Hora, there's 2 things that I really liked. So prior to going to Kythera, I'd never been to Kykladitiko, so Cycladic Islands, so your more well-known islands. And I really like that in the evening, and obviously as Maria said, we were in the pandemic, so it was slightly quieter, but I really like the evening vibe. So it does have that sort of Cycladic feel in the center with the small streets and the bars, and you do get a sense of it being quite personal because it's a very small center. Like there's not hundreds of bars. So we were there, I think I was there 5 days or 6 days. You were longer, and so you got to know some of the locals, but you really felt like you could be like, oh hi, because you'd be walking down the same street, and I really like that personal feel. I think even in the height of summer, there was only 2 or 3 big bar, like not big bars but main bars, so if you were going there every night, they would get to know you, or they would recognize you, and I really really liked that. And the second thing that I liked is, as the Hore is perched at the top of the mountain or on top of the island, when you look out from certain parts, you can't see any other islands in front of you. It's just like the total black darkness, and you just get that sense that you are like away from all the other islands, and you're in your sort of little paradise. And I don't know, I just remember looking out from one of the pizza restaurants we went to that we loved, and I was looking out and just like nothing in front of me, just stars, and there's no other islands that you could see.
Yeah. And there's nothing cutting you either. So I agree with that like those spots where in the day you could just see great views of the sea, and then at night time it's just like you and the stars. It was beautiful. But I agree with you on the community feel that the island gives you in Hora, because you're right, I think it was 2 or 3 bars in Hora, which you came, I think 3 or 4 days after me, and literally I passed by the one night, and the next night the same people are there, and they're like, join us, and I'm like, really? Like, it's super easy to you go with 2 friends and you leave with 5. I mean, I still talk to the people that we met on the island. And they're very friendly.
The other thing that I liked about Hore is when we were driving in, mainly in the daytime, obviously, you see the small island of Kythera, which is opposite, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. But I don't know why, but that island did look like something out of a film, because I think it's just on its own, like opposite Hora. And you can see it, and
in the middle of the sea.
It just looks very it's very prominent, and it's it's not inhabited. I don't know if that's part of it, but we will allude to later like some parts of it that make it unique.
But I mean, I do need to give a shout out though, because one of the places in Hora that I think we visited every single day, and there were days that we went twice.
Dessert o'clock.
The dessert o'clock and the breakfast o'clock, and we went because we were waking up super early, and it was open by 7. Was Fossa Kythera, and I must admit, I've actually learned about restaurants in London through looking who they follow, because they're so into seeing what new has come out in various countries. And they're always looking out for that new recipe or that's something different that they can do. They had great breakfasts. It was like an all-day caf bar where you could go for your breakfast. You could go for the dessert, and oh my God, their desserts were just on another level. Do you remember the banoffee that we had?
Oh, but not. Oh, I love
it was
banoffee.
Insane.
Oh, yeah.
And you could also go for like an afternoon cocktail. I remember before you came, I stopped one night and I just had an Aperol Spritz or something. So it was just that all day where you could have, but you can't miss a breakfast or dessert.
Did you not have
here.
an espresso martini?
I didn't have an espresso martini on that holiday. I have no idea why.
I'm literally, it's a thing that I'm doing is like testing everywhere I go, like espresso martini, and giving them a score out of 10.
Did I sort of get you hooked on that
I
cocktail?
think you did.
Did you like it before?
Yeah, because I love coffee and I mean, I'm not a really big alcohol drinker, but like I just never really considered mixing the both. And then when I had it, I was like, oh my God, this is like amazing. You're getting a coffee fix and you're getting a bit of alcohol. But lightweight, so I could probably only take 2 and then So I quickly found out that you're even more like, I'm very organized, but you had planning down to the T. Like it was a fine planning. Also found out that you like to wake up early in the morning, which was like, yes, I'm not clock watching or like pretending to cough so people wake up. But what would you say? My friends hate that when they're on holiday with me. I do generally have a cough when I'm traveling, but like sometimes I exaggerate it to wake people up. Anyway, what would be the best places you think would be worth our listeners exploring when they go to Kythera?
Okay. I mean, just to add on to your early mornings, I think in Kythera, it was so funny. Like by 8 a.m., I'd had my breakfast, I'd got up, I'd had my coffee, and I was ready to be at the beach by 8. And it was an absolute blessing and a curse simultaneously, because a blessing, I have so much footage from the beaches before you arrived, where it's literally just me on the beach, me, no one else. It was a curse though, because the kiosks on the beaches didn't open until 10:30, so I'd sit around and wait for someone to open up so I could get a coffee or something. But it was definitely great discovering, because I remember when you got there, I was like, I just need to let you know that I wake up a bit early, and you're like, oh my God, thank God. So by the time you got there, we were literally discovering the island together. But anyway, although I wouldn't say I plan things down to the T, but I always have a list with me that I want to tick off. I don't like having a schedule of I need to do this today and that tomorrow, but I do have a list of things that I would like to get through when I go to a destination. This time I didn't really have a list before I got there, but I made one with the locals while I was there. So I was asking around, and I think one of the main people that was giving me so many tips was Mrs. Lidsa, that was running the hotel the rooms that we stayed at. And, there were so many things to do that she had given me on the list, plus the guys that worked at Fossa Kythera that were giving me a long list of stuff to do as well. But I was also discovering things while I was driving around. But, I mean, before I talk to the stuff that I think are worth doing, I do want to plug here that the island was packed with little chapels. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Everywhere. I mean, from where we were staying, within a close proximity, I think within a 5-minute walking distance, there was 10. And throughout the island, you just see a little church and a little church and a little church and like everywhere. And I think I've got unlimited drone footage of sitting on a church on a little hill and like lifting the drone. It's just full of it. And I think that is one of the highlights of the island as well, seeing all these little chapels all around the island. Now, someone did say to me that they think there's about 2,000 of them. I've not managed to confirm that piece of information. I have looked for, I
mean, you should have been counting. We should have been taking count.
All right, next time we go, we'll do, we'll take a little count machine with us and we'll start counting.
So we can verify it.
Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, to give like a very short list without touching on any beaches, because George has been very clear that I'm not allowed to talk about beaches here, to touch on a few of my favourite things. Number 1, that cannot be missed, the castle. It's in Chora. It's at the tip of Chora. I think I visited 2 times, and we visited a couple of times as well. I think we visited in the morning and in the evening. It's
It was Venetian, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely a great spot to watch the sunset. It's free. It has breathtaking views of Kapsali, which is the area below Hora, which is on the beach. And it's literally just a few minutes from the main street in Hora. A walk up. The second that I would recommend, that we didn't go together, George, I went by myself, is it's very close to Hora. It's above Kapsali, and it's called the Church of Saint Ioannis and Grimno, which means Saint John on the cliff, and it's literally built in the it's in the cliff. Apparently, it celebrates on the 29th of August. I think we were there on the 29th, but we probably missed it. And I think that there were monks living there in the previous centuries, but I don't think there are anymore. The third one that again I went to without you is the lighthouse of Mudari. It's located on the northern point of the island, and exactly opposite you can see the island of Elafonisos, which I know George is going to talk about further down. It was built by the British in 1857, and I think it's the largest one that they've built in Greece. Now, I want to give a tip here that when I went, I would definitely be careful with a rental car because it is mainly a dirt road. And then the other thing that I struggled with is that I didn't see any signs, and I had the GPS open, but it only worked until I got to the lighthouse. On the way back, it wouldn't work because there was no reception. So I'm not going to say I panicked, but I literally was trying to recreate and recall the route on the way back, which was not one of the most comfortable feelings I had, given that I went there alone.
Not to do
so
it. Not
just,
to be done alone.
Yeah, so just bear that in mind. The next one, which, George, we've got a lot of memories, is the bridge of Katuni. Again, built by the British in 1826. It's 110 meters long and it's 15 meters high. And you actually, if you remember, you actually don't realize how amazing the bridge is when you're driving over it because you can't see it. So please make sure that if you're following the Google map to get there, make sure that you park, get out of the car and walk to a point where you can actually see the bridge because it is such a sight for sore eyes.
Yep. And Maria managed to take some epic footage of me making my debut on your Instagram page. And what's really good, actually, you have to be careful, but you can stand opposite the bridge down a little track and take pictures of someone sitting on the bridge, or if you had a drone. My family got a fright when I sent that picture, like, kisses from Kythera. And they're like, what are you doing up there?
Yeah, so
it didn't feel that scary when you're sitting on the bridge.
It looks scary. It looks scary. There is a ledge, but when you're taking the picture, or I realized afterwards, because when we posted it, quite a few people sent us, dude, you got him to sit on the edge of like a bridge and he could fall off. You couldn't fall off.
Yeah.
But the footage does look like you can, to be fair.
It does, yeah. And I mean, this bridge has a special significance. This bridge was built out of love. So according to a legend, I don't know if you know this, but I did some extra research.
Ooh.
And the British Commissioner Mackwell had fallen in love with a local enchantress in Katuni and had this bridge built so he could literally go and visit her easily. So easily access over the bridge.
Oh.
See, the things that you do for love, Maria.
Oh dear.
And what's the next one that you did? I think we were talking about waterfalls.
Yeah, so the waterfalls. The waterfalls are known with 2 names on the island. They're either called the waterfalls of Neraida, which means fairy waterfalls, or the waterfalls of Fonissa, which means the waterfalls of the murderer, the murderess, actually, a female murderer. They are located in Milopotamos. I don't know why they're named. They have 2 names and what it means. But, I mean, we attempted to go there, right?
We did. Disappointment, sorry.
Yeah. So, to be honest with you, George, I don't know if we were in the right spot because when I was researching after, it looked like there was a trek to get to the waterfall, though you found some blog that said that there hasn't been water since 2017. So we don't know if we were in the right place. We think we were.
I mean, it's literally, it's basically that thing that you see on TikTok or Instagram. I'm sorry, for my my experience on that time, Instagram versus reality was that we didn't see a waterfall. And actually, if you go on Google Maps, because a top tip that's really good is that when you're traveling, you can actually, and this is Maria's tip, but I'm giving it, unless you've given it already, that you go and like put places, you pin places you'd like to see. On Google Maps, it is actually called Neraida Waterfall, and quite a lot of the reviews mention that it's either dried up or there's not much of a waterfall. Whereas I think some of the pictures we saw, I was having images of like being like somewhere like Thailand and like sitting under the waterfall, you know, doing my hair and having a nice image for the gram. It just wasn't that. I think that's why it was let down. So yeah. However, if our listeners do go to Kythera and find a luscious waterfall and take a picture and send us, you can have a follow. No, I mean, we would love to see it, because if we've been proven wrong, that's fine.
I can't wait for people to be going to random waterfalls and tagging you, George. But anyway, so the next one, which I can't wait to talk about, is the Cave of Hagia Sophia. Now, the Cave of Hagia Sophia is actually one of the most famous tourist attractions of Kythera. It's located in Milopotamos, and I think that it started to be explored extensively in the 1930s, and 40 years later, a map of the interior was developed. So it took quite a long time. From what I know, the cave is 500 meters long from beginning to end, but only 200 of them are actually open for people to walk through. Now, fun fact, I thought that I visited the cave of Hagia Sophia, and I remember I did this without you. I returned to the room and I was chatting to Mrs. Lidsa, and I was telling her that I went to the cave of Hagia Sophia, and she said to me, "You couldn't have gone to the cave of Hagia Sophia because it's closed." And I said to her, "But I went in. It said the cave of Hagia Sophia, and I went in. It was an underground cave." And she said, "But it's not an underground cave. Where did you go?" Anyway, there are 3 caves of Hagia Sophia on the island of Kythera. And I went to the one in Galamos, but apparently there's 2 more. But the one that I went to is not the famous one that it's known for. The famous one is actually in Milopotamos, which is also where the waterfalls are. So I found out after the fact that I thought I had been there, and I was super excited about it, and then later discovered that I hadn't even been. And yeah, we couldn't go because it was closed. But yeah, oh well. But anyway, there's one more before we start talking about beaches, which I'm going to leave for George to chat about, because we really wanted to go, and I think he's got a bit of a story to tell. Right, my Greek Islanders, we're going to cut the episode here because me and George got very enthusiastic about talking about the island of Kythera, and the conversation went on for about an hour. So, cutting it into 2 parts, stay tuned because part 2 is coming soon.
Right, my Greek Islanders, this comes to the end of another episode of this podcast.
Now you know the drill. If you like this episode, share it to share the love with the My Greek Island community, where everyone is welcome. And
don't forget to follow, like, subscribe, and all that jazz, and maybe give us a little rating from wherever you're listening to us from, so you are notified every time a new episode drops. And if you have any suggestions or requests, get in touch.
And for those of you visiting Greece, don't forget to tag @MyGreekIsland on Instagram for a future feature. Until then, see you later, or as they say in Greek,
Ta leme.